Hello, and welcome to the Self Care Sanctuary Podcast, a space created for rest, reflection, and honest conversations about mental, emotional, and relational wellness. And I am your host, Sharron Terry. Now, licensed professional counselor, for those of you who don't know. And I am so excited and so happy to have with me today talking about a topic that is very near and dear to me, Miss Tami Stackelhouse. She is an award-winning author, founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute, host of the Fibromyalgia Podcast, and executive producer of the featured documentary Invisible. Tammy, she teaches fibromyalgia patients how to take back control of their lives and health using her signature fibromyalgia wellness framework so that they can break free from the prison of their bodies, have begin living lives that they love. Welcome to the sanctuary, Tammy. Thank you so much. Did I
Thank you
leave
for having
anything
me.
out?
Oh,
um,
goodness, there's a lot.
I was gonna say, I'm sure I have.
Oh my goodness, after almost 20 years, you know. But
Yes,
you got you got the main part of my mission, just to help those fibromyalgia patients who are out there who are feeling lost and frustrated, to help them get their lives back.
absolutely. And I'm here for it. So many people, have to struggle with managing fibromyalgia, and other chronic illnesses like fibromyalgia. And before we really get into it, I just want to let everyone know who may be, dealing with chronic pain, invisible illnesses, relational strain because of these illnesses. If any point that you may feel like, you notice something going on in your body, like tension, if you feel like you have to take a break because your emotions may be coming up, please feel free to do so. This is a recording, so the podcast, you can stop and go whenever you need to. If you need to process some things first and before you go on, please feel free to do that. Um, we want you to take a deep breath, and there's no rush. There's no rush that says I gotta finish this podcast all right now. But we want to just have you be mindful of what's going on in your bodies at any given moment. And so, if it feels supportive, you can take a slow breath with me. Let's do that right now, just to get ourselves prepared. Let's inhale through our nose and exhale through our mouths. And just let your shoulders soften. This is a safe space. And let's get right into it. So today's episode is titled Loving Through the Pain, Supporting Your Loved Ones Through Fibromyalgia. And this conversation is for partners, family members, and caregivers, anyone who's living with fibromyalgia who wants to feel seen and believed. So, Tammy, let's just start right off with what is fibromyalgia. And just as a full disclosure to all of our listeners and podcast sanctuary family, I just want to just be fully transparent in saying that this is something that I actually have learned to manage over. I think I was diagnosed. I'm old now, so I was I was in my early 30s when I
Yeah.
found out that I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And fortunately, I had a doctor who was aware of these things. But we're going to go ahead and just do some myth busting and some education about what is fibromyalgia, Tammy.
Yes, yes. I think you and I was diagnosed in my mid 30s.
Oh,
So, yeah,
really?
we won't talk about how long ago that is, though.
Right. Neither one of us.
Oh, goodness. So, fibromyalgia is a chronic pain condition, and there are four primary symptoms. There can be a lot more, but the four main ones are widespread body pain.
Hmm.
So, all over body pain, right? We have fatigue. And not just like I'm a little bit tired. This is like I've got no energy in my batteries. My
Hmm.
batteries are broken. They're not
Right.
recharging, right?
Hmm.
We also have unrefreshing sleep. So if you sleep really well and you wake up in the morning and you feel rested, it ain't fibromyalgia. That is
Exactly.
not how we wake up. You can sleep many hours and still wake up exhausted. And then the fourth main symptom is that cognitive dysfunction or brain fog or fibro fog, as we call it. But it also comes with things like headaches, digestive issues, all kinds of stuff. It affects about 1 in 16 people, generally more women than men, but
Hmm.
between you and me and everyone listening, I think it's probably actually more even women and men. It's just that guys don't go to the doctor, right? And fibromyalgia is sort of seen as a women's illness. So if a guy goes to the doctor with these kinds of symptoms, fibromyalgia is not the thing they're thinking, right?
And for, just to speak to the men, there a lot of times they don't even equate it with even being an illness. They just think, oh, I'm tired, or just any other excuse, and not even wanting to admit that there's something wrong to even go to the doctor in the first
Absolutely.
place. A lot of those things are ignored. And even for women, just thinking, oh, I just need a little bit more rest. I need this, I need that. Or, they just don't even think that that's a thing. Because
Hmm.
earlier on, and I'm sure you know this, is that earlier on, doctors really dismissed women a lot.
Yes,
They, oh, it's nothing wrong with you, because a lot of times there weren't any specific tests or blood tests, because everything can actually come up looking like you're fine and you're not fine. So
that's right.
I just want the listeners who are experiencing these things to know that you are seen, you are heard, and these is very valid. So if you
Yeah.
find a doctor who is telling you that there's not anything wrong, get another one.
That is right. That is right. And, to put that in perspective for folks, I recently ran across some research that showed that doctors here in the US have an average of 9 clinical hours, or 9 classroom hours, I should say, on pain management training. That's not
Mhm.
9 hours on fibromyalgia. That's not 9 hours on chronic pain. That is all pain, all kinds.
Mhm.
9 hours.
Which is nothing.
It's nothing. Canada's a little better. Canada, I think it's about 18, but it's still like nowhere near enough. So, nothing bad about your doctors. They're just not taught this. They just don't
Exactly.
know. And so, if you are struggling finding somebody who really knows and understands, that's normal.
Mhm. It
Shouldn't
really
be that
is.
way, but it is very common.
Yeah. I know with my doctor, one of the ways that she kind of, diagnosed me with this is by the pressure points that I had. There are some key pressure points in your body that will give you an indication of, maybe this is something that you have. Would you like to speak to those? Some of
Yes,
those?
yes. With fibromyalgia, we call those tender points.
Yes.
There's 18, so 9 pairs of two.
Hmm.
There's several in your neck,
Right.
right?
Right.
There's some in your hips, your low back, your inside of your elbow. And these are places that, for whatever reason, we don't really know why, but
Hmm.
fibro people really hurt a lot more there. There's even a couple of control points. So, right in the middle of your forehead, that should not hurt.
Hmm.
So, I mean, although we get headaches, right? So,
Yeah.
so we'll take
That's
that with a
probably
grain
the
of
one
salt.
person, nothing, one place, nothing.
Oh, one place it doesn't hurt.
One place on my
Yeah.
body, nothing hurt.
Exactly, exactly. So that is something that has been used for many years. These days, it used to be you had to have a certain number. Nowadays, you don't necessarily have to have a certain number
Right.
because we're looking at the whole. We're looking at that widespread body pain. We're looking at the fatigue. We're looking at how long has this been going on. We're looking at, can this be explained another way? And
Hmm.
just to clear up something else too, fibromyalgia is not like a wastebasket diagnosis. We don't know what it is, so it's fibromyalgia, right?
No.
It's
Mm-mm.
also not entirely a diagnosis of exclusion,
Hmm.
where if it's nothing else, that's the only way it can be fibromyalgia, because you can have fibromyalgia and lupus, you can have
Hmm.
fibromyalgia and, rheumatoid arthritis. They
Yes.
come together so often. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is a good point. I know at one point I was also tested for those very things
Yep.
with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis and other things along with that. But fortunately, it does help rule those things out that if you get tested for those, because this is the thing with fibromyalgia, what I found that it mimics a lot of other things. It shares a lot of other illnesses symptoms. So
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why it would be so hard for doctors to really pinpoint it. But
Mm-hmm.
things like your skin tends to be sensitive, right?
Yep.
Your
Yep.
senses are just seemingly more heightened than other people's senses. So you
Yep.
may be very sensitive to noise or very sensitive to light, right? Each person has a different set of symptoms depending on, who they are, how they show up, and also even where they are in their lives at any particular
Oh,
time.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think the way that I like when I'm talking to people, maybe they don't have a diagnosis yet. I talk to a lot of people who are like, I think I might have fibromyalgia. The thing that I listen for the most is the pain amplification effect that happens with fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia is an amplifier. It will take whatever you've got going on and it will turn up the volume. So if you've got arthritis in your knee, it's going to make your whole body hurt. That's the
Mm-hmm.
part that's fibromyalgia, right? It hurts worse than it should, and it hurts everywhere when it should just hurt in one place.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fibromyalgia effect. And so there's a lot of things we can do to treat fibromyalgia in spite of maybe what you've been told. Again, remember, doctors just don't know, but there's a lot of things that can be done, and we can turn down that amplification, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's things that we can't fix, right? If somebody has degenerative disc disease or something like that, we can't necessarily fix that, so they may or may not be pain free, but
Mm-hmm.
we can absolutely take fibromyalgia out of the equation so it's not being amplified.
Okay. So this is very true. And just so that we're clear, let's just do a quick rundown of some of the symptoms. Pain is one of the main symptoms. You mentioned brain fog is one of another symptom. Let's just give them a few more symptoms, and then let's just talk about, like as you mentioned, how can we manage? And this is going to be important for our family members, right? Because we're going to talk
Yeah.
about how we, as sufferers, I don't know if I want to say sufferers, 'cause, but it is what it is.
Sometimes we're sufferers. Sometimes we
Yes,
are just have been diagnosed.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, for those of us who manage it,
Yes.
um, let's talk about what are some of the other symptoms to look out for. Maybe when we should actually go to the doctor. And then let's
Yep.
get into maybe some of the impact that this has on our family and our relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I'm actually going to talk about those main symptoms a little bit more because even
Okay.
though they sound sort of similar to a lot of other things on the surface, there are some differences.
And
So, fibromyalgia pain, there's nothing like physiologically wrong where it hurts. The problem is actually in our central nervous system and how we're processing that pain. And
Mm-hmm.
because of that, we will have pain that moves around. So if you just hurt in one place all the time, that is probably not fibromyalgia. And I see this even with my fibro clients. If
Mm-hmm.
they've got some, like one spot that hurts a lot, you need to go
Mm-hmm.
get that checked out because there's probably something else going on too.
Right.
Fibro pain will move around. Your legs might hurt one day, then your back hurts the next day, and then your arms hurt. Like it moves around and also waxes and wanes, right? So you'll have good days, you'll have bad days, right? The fatigue is also, like I said a little bit ago, it's a little bit different than just being tired. Those of us who are old enough to have some of those early cell phones with the batteries that after a while would just like not charge, right? You'd leave them on the
Mm-hmm.
charger all night long and it'd say it was charged, and then you'd be like, oh, it only lasted 20 minutes. That's exactly fibro fatigue. Our batteries, our mitochondria actually do have some dysfunction, and so it isn't the same. So that's a big part of it. The digestive issues. So one of the doctors that I've worked with, she calls it the crud, and I can't remember what the CRUD stands for, but that your digestion just isn't happy. People will often have IBS. There will be sometimes even switching between constipation and diarrhea, but just that uncomfortableness, the bloating, the pain, the abdominal pain. So digestion is a huge piece for us. I mentioned headaches. Right? The majority of fibro patients will have headache issues. Headaches were actually my first chronic pain diagnosis. Back when I was a
Okay.
teenager, I had chronic daily headaches and migraines. So if you're somebody who deals with like these things that I'm mentioning should be sort of like a list where you're checking the boxes, right?
Right.
If it's just headaches, you need to see a neurologist, you need treatment for your headaches, right? But if you start checking a lot of these boxes, it's definitely time to go look.
Mm-hmm.
You might have typically it's muscular pain, right? It's soft tissue pain, but it could be joint pain.
Mm-hmm.
I had a point where I felt like, my hands just were like the joints in my hands were just really stiff and sore. That was
Mm-hmm.
just fibromyalgia. It wasn't arthritis.
Yeah.
So that's another box you can check.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
I think that another thing for me was just being tired, just being so tired. And you mentioned, you know, not waking up and not feeling rested.
Yes.
So if you wake up and you know you had slept maybe 6 hours, 8 hours, and you feel worse than when you went to bed, like there's been many of times when I've awakened and feel like a bus ran me over, or it's like, who beat me up when I was asleep?
Right, right,
Right?
exactly.
It's like you don't get the same amount of rest that
No.
everybody, and your rest is not the same. So, uh, and it's different for everyone, like we said, but for me, it's sometimes the longer I sleep, the worse it is. Because what
Yep.
happens is your body is getting stiff, you're not moving around. So
Yeah.
you tend, when you do wake up, it's like now I've learned, okay, I'm gonna have to stretch while I'm in bed. I'm gonna have to do some twirl my feet around so that I can get that, on the floor without
Right, right. Get everything sort of, it's like we're
moving.
the Tin Man, right? We got to get it all moving again. Yeah, sleep is a classic problem, and there are some doctors I know, fibro researchers that I know that actually consider fibromyalgia to be a sleep disorder.
Oh,
We actually there's more than that,
yeah,
so I
yeah.
don't know if I totally agree with that, but that just highlights the importance of this sleep piece. We
Mm-hmm.
have something called alpha delta sleep, which is where the alpha awake brain waves
Mm-hmm.
intrude into the slow wave delta sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you're sleeping with one eye open, right? So
Mm-hmm.
our nervous system regulation is whacked, right? Our heart rate variability will be tanked. We might have, a higher heart rate,
Hmm.
right? Because just our nervous system markers, we're like stuck in fight or flight. So we
Exactly.
see a lot of people with more anxiety, less able to handle the things that come our way, like stressors in our lives,
Hmm.
good or bad, right?
Hmm.
All of those things play a role. And I think the thing that makes fibromyalgia so challenging and so debilitating for people is the fact that it's so unpredictable, or at least at the beginning it can feel very unpredictable. There's things we can do to change that, to shift that, but it's like I can't make any plans because I don't know how I'm going to feel,
Hmm.
right? Or you might, and this kind of leads into our conversation about our family and our relationships. You'll be totally fine one day,
Yeah.
and the next day need somebody to take care of you,
Hmm.
right? And so,
Yes.
when I was diagnosed, I had only been married 6 months. And let me tell you, my new husband, I feel so bad looking back now. It's like, oh
Hmm.
my goodness, that poor guy. Because like one day we're out, we're doing things. I'm riding on the back of his motorcycle, we're having a good time, and the next day I'm in the chair. Oh my God, can you just give me a glass of water? You know,
Yeah,
totally
exactly.
helpless.
Yes. And it can happen so quickly. Like, I
Yeah.
remember a time when my family and I were going on a family vacation, and we got on the plane. And I had been doing a lot of running around the day before and not necessarily paying attention to or being mindful about my body. Because a lot of times with fibromyalgia, you forget that you have it when if you're
If
feeling
it's a
good
good
one
day.
day,
Yeah.
you forget all
Yeah.
about it. And we tend not to pace ourselves. We'll use all that energy up while we can because we don't know when we're going to get it again. So to make a long story short, I got on the plane. By the time we got off the plane, I couldn't walk. So they had to get me a wheelchair, wheel me to the next connection. And by the time I got to the next connection, I was able to walk back on the plane, on the next plane. But there were some things that I had to do in between the plane change, right? So for me, my mom's friend was there and she said, take some mustard, get some mustard, and then I drank a Gatorade. And with those combinations, I was able to snap back and be back on the plane before we got to the next destination. So things can happen just that quickly.
Yes, they can. Yes, they can. And so our friends and families watching us, I mean, this is why a lot of times people think we're faking it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
We know we're not because we're living in the body. We know what it actually feels like, right? But
exactly.
people looking at us, it's like, but I don't understand,
Right. You
and
were just
I
fine.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And so that's where communication with our family, with our friends, with the people that we work with, the other people around us, that communication can be really helpful. It can be really scary to try to
Yes.
communicate some of that, right? Especially if you're getting those are you faking it kind of vibes, right? It can be scary to open that up, but I think that that communication is really the key um, to those relationships and to really making that life work with other people. They have to know what's going on with you.
For sure. And that has been a game changer for me. I know, excuse me, a couple of my family members that was with us had never seen that side of it. It was
Mhm.
something I think I probably talk about it now more than I have ever talked about it over the last 30 years. 30, over these last years, but it's good for them to be able to put it into like to see the result of it, to see the outcome of, oh, this is what it looks like when she's having an episode. So now, because of the communication, my sons or my mom, hey, have you drank your water today?
Yes.
Have you? I see that you're not doing this, or my son, Mom, have you had some liquid IV because you've been moving around a lot? Or they now help prompt me, to remember things of how to care for myself because we get
That's right.
busy.
Yeah.
So if you're, having these challenges, even though it may be scary and difficult to have these conversations, your family members will appreciate you sharing with them what you're really going through so that they can support you because they love you and they want life to be much easier for you.
That's right. That's right. And, I've had some clients where they sort of jokingly say, although it's true, that their families sometimes think they are getting worse when they're working with me or working with a coach. But
Mhm.
that's really only because they're starting to be more transparent about how they really feel, right? They were
Yes.
hiding it from their families before, not asking for help, not saying no, not resting when they really should have been. And now they're opening up more about that. And so it can look like, oh, you're worse now, but it's really just you're being honest. And that honesty, like you said, it really helps them help us.
Hmm.
There's an activity that I developed specifically for one of my clients. We call it the Flare Survival Plan,
Hmm.
and it's really thinking through when I have these symptoms, what helps me. And we did it for her because she was going to be having her tonsils out. She knew she wasn't going to be able to talk and communicate. And she knew she was going to have it written down and in a way that her fiance could really help her. If this is, you know, tonsillectomy pain, I need these meds. If it's fibro pain, I need these meds. If it's fatigue, I need this. And really thinking through all of it. Because the other challenging thing for us is when we're in the middle of it, when we're in the middle of all that fatigue, all that pain, guess what? Our brains don't work either. And so if somebody asks us, what do you need? How can I help? There's nothing there.
Exactly. Like, I don't know. Yeah, so in those moments, it's better to be proactive rather than reactive.
That's right.
So, in those moments, how can our loved ones support us? Like, let's just start with the things that they shouldn't say. Let's
Oh
start
my
there.
goodness. That's a long list. No, I think I think really the main thing is you've got to believe us. So anything that's like doubting, right? Or but you were fine before, or but you don't look sick, or any of those kinds of things, if you're thinking them, just don't say them,
Right.
right?
Keep it to yourself.
That's right, because we're already putting enough of that guilt on
Mhm,
ourselves,
mhm.
right? So definitely don't say that. Um, if you are not somebody like if you know somebody with fibromyalgia, but you're not like in their core. So let's say it's a coworker or a cousin, or where you're a little bit more on the outside. I wouldn't necessarily even suggest treatments, right? So none of the, oh, have you tried this? Or, oh, I read about this. Have you tried that? Because, I mean, the majority of the time, we've been there, done that,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
If you're more on the inside where you know what the person may have tried and you see something new, then my answer might be a little bit different,
Hmm.
right? But the majority of the people on the outside who don't know the ins and the outs, have you seen this? Have you tried this? Can be just not so fun for us.
Right. Because you're thinking to yourself, do you not think I've tried to tried
Right.
everything to get better?
That's right. That's right. And there's a lot of internalized ableism that we don't really talk about. And it's this idea that if you're sick, it's your fault, right? Meaning you haven't tried everything. Surely there's something you can do to fix this. Or, you didn't take care of yourself well enough and now you're in this situation, right? You pushed all of those little things like that are essentially saying it's our fault that we are sick. And you
Right.
would never say it quite like that, right? Like I wouldn't
Right.
say to you, why'd you how did you make yourself sick? I would never say that. But we
Mm-hmm.
do say things like, oh, you probably pushed yourself too hard,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Yeah,
You're gonna make yourself sick. Why are you doing that? That's one of the things that you have to be aware of, that you don't want to, that's supporting because you're trying to show the person that you care, but the intention doesn't necessarily negate the impact of what your words are,
that's right.
because we internalize things differently.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And for anyone with fibromyalgia, we have gone through so many people who didn't believe us,
Mhm.
that to have the people that we love and who love us also not believe us, it kind of feels like the last nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
It's like, I thought this was going to be a safe place. I thought, these are the people who love me. I thought that I could really share this here. And now you're not believing me. Right? I'm getting
Yeah.
that from my doctors. I'm getting that from society. I'm getting that from my Facebook feed. Right?
Right.
I don't need it from you.
Bottom line.
That's right. That's right.
Now, I know that you talk about how our family and friends should actually be more interested in listening to us instead of trying to fix us. Can you speak
Yeah.
more to that?
Yes, yes. It kind of is ties in a little bit with what we were saying about, hey, have you tried this thing? I read this article. It's kind of like that. When we need a safe place to just be able to say, today's a bad day, right?
Right.
My
Hmm.
fibro is bad today. I'm in more pain. I'm exhausted. Today I'm feeling frustrated.
Hmm.
There really isn't anything you can do to fix that. Right.
Right.
So slipping into problem solving mode isn't necessarily helpful, because honestly, what we might need in that time is just simply time, right?
Hmm.
Time for our bodies to recover. You can't rush that, right? You can't speed it up. So when we can listen, when we can acknowledge, gosh, that must be super frustrating for you. That must be really hard for you. That can go such a long way. I tell you what, when I talk to people with fibromyalgia, like a new person coming in, sometimes I'd say probably the vast majority of the times, I'm the first person they're talking to who actually has fibromyalgia as well and who really understands. And just that relationship of you get me is just
Yes.
so healing. And while your caregivers, your family, your friends, they might not have fibromyalgia, they might not totally get it, that same sort of listening and validation is way more helpful than trying to problem solve in the moment. Now, the exception to this, I would say, is when it's a good day. When
Hmm.
it's a good day, you might be able to say, hey, I noticed this the other day, and, how can I better help you in that moment? But again, don't ask us in the moment. Our brains are offline. ask us, ask us at a good moment,
Right.
because then we'll be able to answer that question a little bit better. But yeah, that listening and that validation of, gosh, this must be hard for you. And I would, if you are trying to develop some empathy towards the people in your life with fibromyalgia, think about other times when maybe you have felt that way, right? So if you had COVID, or if you've had the flu, or one of my clients, her husband actually broke his wrist. And so he was kind of helpless with just one hand for, several weeks there while his wrist was healing. And he's like, oh gosh, this gives me a whole new appreciation, right? It's definitely not the same, but it gives you a taste. And then take that and imagine there is no cure. Doesn't mean we can't get better. We'll talk about that. But there is no cure for fibromyalgia. So, how would you feel if your COVID never got better, right? If your wrist never healed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I have shared it or tried to help people understand it by comparing it as a toothache, right? With, you know, how a lot of people have had a toothache before, and a lot of nerve pain is involved with that toothache. So when your tooth is hurting and that pain is radiating throughout, and it throws your whole body off, like you can't think, you can't
Yep.
eat, even though it's just your tooth, your whole body feels out of whack. Like you can't even see straight when you have a bad tooth or and nerve pain, or if you've ever had to get a root canal, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So if you think about it in terms of that, then it'll give you an idea of what that's like. But we can't have anything pulled out to stop it. Right?
That's
We
right.
can't, there's no cure for us. And this can go on every day,
Yeah.
every day. And we may have a break here and there, but there's always a low grade or low level of pain somewhere throughout our bodies, even on a good day.
Hmm.
It's just that the pain is at a minimal that day where we can ignore it. But other days, it can be on 1,000 as opposed to maybe on a 10. For us, a
Right.
10 is good. For someone else, a 10 is horrible. But when
Yeah.
you're trying to put it in perspective, just to try to give our listeners an idea, mostly, you know, for those who are supporting your supporting cast, so to speak, that if they can imagine that
Yeah.
way, I think
Hmm.
that that'll kind of help them say, "Oh my God, that hurts,"
Yes.
you know.
Yes. Yes. And, when I do talks for groups, when I can do them in person, I do a lot over Zoom, but when I can do them in person, one of the things that I will often do is give everybody a clothespin
Yes.
and have them stick it on their finger at the
Mhm.
beginning of my talk and
Mhm.
leave it on. By the end of a 10-minute talk, they're like, oh my God, when can I take this off? I don't even know what you said for the last 5 minutes because
Right.
all I can think about is the clothespin on my finger.
Mhm.
That's what it's like. So
Yes,
if you're
I saw
listening to this
that.
and you want to experiment with your own clothespin,
Yeah, I saw that on your site, and um I don't want to jump the gun. We'll give everyone that information in a little bit. But let's talk about how our family members need to be gracious, right? Compassionate, but also flexible.
yes, yes. Remember, we don't know. It could be a good day, it could be a bad day. We might not know until we wake up. We might not know until the party's going to start at 7 p.m., right? And so being flexible with plans, especially, it's so important for us because when we feel like we're letting you down, when we feel like, oh my goodness, here I am canceling again, they're going to think I'm a terrible friend, I don't love them anymore, right? Like we are already putting so much guilt and pressure on ourselves. We certainly do not need any more. So just like everything, take every plan with a this might happen, right?
Mhm.
This is what we're shooting for, and it may or may not happen. And if it's something that's really important, then it's also really, it can be super helpful to make sure there's less happening before or after, right? So if it is a really important thing that I want to make sure I go to on Saturday, I'll make sure that I have a really light Friday.
Yep.
Right? I'll make sure that like that is the only thing I do on Saturday, right?
Yes.
And even then, it's still a maybe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And so, again, just taking everything as this might happen, which can be really hard for some personality types, right?
Hmm.
Because some personalities, it's like, no, you said this is what we were going to do. I've developed all these expectations now around what my day was going to look like, what the vacation was going to look like. And you just have to develop some flexibility. So I'll give you an example for this. My husband has listened to one band his entire life. He is a major Metallica fan. And when they came to town, of course, he was going.
Hmm.
And so we had a whole conversation ahead of time about the fact that I was going to go with him, but I might leave. And
There you
if I
go.
leave, it's not because I'm mad. It's not because there's something wrong. It's just, thrash metal and a fibro body don't necessarily mix well.
Right.
Right? So I might go sit out, where I can still hear, but just not quite so loud. Or I may go back to our hotel room. We actually got a hotel that was super close to the venue. So there wasn't a lot of travel back and forth. I ended up being able to stay through the whole thing. But having that conversation ahead of time, I think
Yes.
really helps so much because I just knew that if we didn't have that conversation and I did have to leave, it would have ruined his whole night. He'd be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
is she okay? Where'd she go? What's going on?" Right? But having that conversation ahead of time, this, if I need to, this is what I'm going to do to take care of myself. This is all about me. It's not about you.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So
Yes.
having that flexibility of just both for us as the person with fibromyalgia, right, to have those backup plans in place for what we can do if it does turn into a flare or a higher symptom situation, but also communicating that with the people around us, right, so that they can have that flexibility of expectations.
Yes, it's very important to set the appropriate expectations. So, like you said, even setting the expectation that I may have to go, or if you are the person supporting the person with fibromyalgia, check in with them before you make all these plans, particularly when you're going on vacation, right?
Oh, yeah.
Keep in mind, like your person may not be able to do all the things that you would do, but just understand, like if they say, no, I'm not going to be able to do that, but you can go ahead and do it. Don't try to force the situation about, come on, you can sit. Because sometimes, even if they're not engaging, just sitting and watching everyone else engage can be hard as well. Or if you're going out to a specific event, check in with the person. Hey, you're okay? Maybe halfway through, are you okay? If they say I'm fine, then fine. But just letting them know that you are being mindful about them, like you said, if that person needs to leave early, right? Make sure that things are in place so that they can leave early, or maybe that person needs to drive separately so
Hmm.
that they don't feel guilty about having to have you leave early because they're not feeling well, because that's a real thing, right?
Yes.
We do,
Yes.
as you mentioned, carry guilt about, and we're always thinking about how am I feeling and how is that going to affect those around me? Because we smile through pain a lot and we do a lot of things to try to make everyone around us feel comfortable when we're actually not well.
Right. 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 And we end up feeling so often like we're the downer, right? That we're bringing everybody down or that we're a burden, right?
Hmm.
Because, especially if you're someone who is naturally a caretaker, and I think a lot of us can be,
Hmm.
right? We're the one who takes care of everybody else, which is part of how we ended up in this situation, I think.
Exactly.
But it's really hard to be the person that's now being taken care of. And I think
Yes.
it's really important for us as patients, as the person living in the fibro body, to not put extra drama on the people around us, right? Like, don't we think they're thinking things that they may not be even thinking,
Right.
right? So when you say, "Oh, I need to stay in the room and rest on vacation," a lot of times we'll think, "Oh, now they think that I, just don't want to spend time with them, or now they're just frustrated that I go on vacation and stay in the hotel the whole time." It's like, "No, no, 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 no. Let that just drop. Like, you take care of you, let them take care of them."
I love
Right?
that. I love that. Yes. Taking responsibility and accountability for yourself, particularly when you are a caregiver, and that naturally arises where we're constantly thinking about what someone else. but they're responsible for their well-being as well. We can help each other. So let's talk about, how we can help with the invisible load.
Yes, yes. That first of all, what is that invisible load?
Exactly.
Right. So the example I always give is that, if my husband is like, "Hey, do you want to go to the movies tonight?" You might think I have to make one decision. Do I want to go to the movies or not? But that's not true. I have to make 100 decisions, 1,000 decisions. I have to think, okay, how's my body feeling right now? Can I sit in that chair? How long is the movie? Can I sit there that long? How late is the movie? Is it going to make me too late? Is that going to mess with my sleep, which will then mess with tomorrow? Have I had enough to eat that I'm not going to, crash? Like,
Hmm.
there are 1,000 decisions that we have to make. And so for me, that is really a lot of that invisible load, right?
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
already have to make so many decisions that if you ask me, which movie do you want to see? That's just
Hmm.
one too many,
Like, what are
right?
we having for dinner?
Yes, yes. What's for dinner? Oh, God. Right. So those, and that's without even thinking about, that toothache you were talking about, right? That
Right.
that pain that's always there, that's sort of droning on, sucking our energy, and the fatigue and the brain fog and all of those things, right? So being able to help with that, it's actually better if instead of what's for dinner, or even where do you want to go for dinner,
Hmm.
like, do you want this or this?
There you
Right?
go.
Or
Hmm.
let's go here. And then you can always like veto the suggestion and make a
Mm.
new suggestion. But it simplifies so much, right? We go from a wide open blank slate of, God, it could be anything, to a binary yes or no, right? Do I do
Yes.
this? Do I not do this? So that the planning, some of those decisions, some of those daily tasks, those can really free up a lot of energy and brain power for us. If you are, if you're healthy, especially if you're young and healthy,
Hmm.
uh, this might seem dumb almost, right? That making these kind of decisions would just, make us hurt more and make us more fatigued. But it does. It's just the reality of it. So
Yeah.
anything you can do to help with those can really be super beneficial for us and
Hmm.
actually improve our symptoms. And again, this is if you want to talk about like which things, like setting up some predetermined, we only go out once a week, or Friday's date night, or whatever. Like, if we want to set up some routines, set up some regular plans, don't try to do that when we're in the middle of a flare. Try, like, set it, have those conversations on a good day so that you actually get all of us, our whole brain, all of us there to be able to be part of that conversation. And if you notice that it is a higher symptom day, that's the day where it is super helpful for us if you actually just take more of the reins and just make more of those decisions up front, and then give us the out of, do you want to or not, you know?
Yes, I agree. And also doing little things like, here's a cup of tea. Hey, I folded your laundry for you. Or, hey, I cleaned the bathroom. Oh, I know you didn't ask, but I just thought I'd help out. Those things really add up and mean so much. Because you spoke about, not asking, and sometimes a lot of times, it's really hard for us to ask for help and admit that we need help. So our natural propensity is to say, no, no, I'm good. I got it. I can handle it. Oh, no, you don't have to do that. You know, it's hard to accept the help, especially when as you mentioned earlier, that person is a caregiver as well. Caregivers have a hard time receiving care.
Yeah. Yes, that is so true. I've always been so grateful for this. When I was a kid, we had a house fire and the whole community kind of came together and oh gosh, they donated like dressers and clothes and toilet paper and, all kinds of stuff. And my mom had such a hard time, like sort of being in the center of that with everybody helping us because she was always the person in the background helping everybody else, right? And so it was really really hard for her to really be in that place of being in the center and everybody helping her. And I remember our pastor at the time, I just happened to be standing next to mom when they had this conversation, but he said, sometimes the best gift you can give to someone is to let them give to you.
Oh, yes.
And I mean, I was in grade school when that happened, and I have never forgotten that. And it has been so helpful for me in those
Mm.
times where I'm like, oh, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to, ask for help. Or if somebody offers, having a hard time saying, yes, I could use that help. And just remembering that's a gift that I'm giving them to
Yes.
actually let them help me. Because if you think about how you feel when you help somebody that you love, why would you want to deny someone else that?
Hmm.
Right? That good
Yeah.
feeling that, especially for people who show their love through actions,
Access. Yes.
right? They
Hmm.
need to be able to do things. That's how they show you that they love you. So, having that that opportunity for them to be able to give is super helpful.
Yes. And because a lot of times people don't know how to support you. So acts of service is their way, like you said, or, just giving you a hug, maybe how they can, affirm and validate you when you're not feeling well. So let's talk about how this support, since we're talking about how our family can support us, talking about support independence and then this realistic hope that you oftentimes talk about.
Yes, yes, hope is my word. That's what God made me to do, was to
Mhm.
encourage hope in people. I think the challenge with fibromyalgia is finding a balance between being realistic about the body that you have right now today that you're actually living in, not some idealized version, if every day's a good day, and not what you used to be, right? But right now, today, what does my body need? What are my limitations? Balancing that with the hope of a better future, right? Because we need both. We can't get stuck in the reality of the situation because then we never do improve. And we
Mhm.
can't get stuck in just always looking at the future because then we live in denial of the bodies that we have,
Right.
right? So we have to hold both. And so I think that's sometimes where the people around us can be really helpful. First of all, just, reminding us not to give up on that hope,
Mhm.
because while there is no cure, there is a lot that can be done, but that help can be hard to find. And so just, reminding the people in your life that there are answers out there. Just, keep looking. How can I even help you look, maybe?
Mhm.
And also, we're not necessarily even shooting for pain free, right?
Right.
We're what we're shooting for is you to be able to live a life you love. That may mean reducing symptoms, and it probably does, but it may also mean changing some of your expectations for what that future looks like. And that's a whole nother conversation. So I'll just leave that there.
Yeah.
Um, but also that then, like you said, that independence, right? We don't want to be dependent. We do need help, but we also don't want to just, be a bump on a log either. That's not good for our self esteem, for our self image, for us taking care of ourselves, right? We need to be able to contribute in meaningful ways. And sometimes that needs to shift what we think that is. So if you're a mom with little ones, maybe that looks like, you know, laying in bed and doing story time with the kids,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or quiet games. It's not necessarily mom taking the kids to the park to run around. Maybe dad does that, and
Hmm.
mom does the quiet story time,
Yes.
right? And so like shifting what it looks like, but also dad doesn't do everything either, right?
Right.
Because that's not good for us. And I mean us as the patient. It's not good for us. So, you know, supporting people doesn't mean doing everything for them. That can be damaging. We want to still have that autonomy while still honoring our limits, right? And recognizing that sometimes those small wins are actually big
Big.
wins,
Yes.
right?
Yes, that is so true. And, we use the words, well, I like to think of things in terms of the village, right? Everyone has their village or their team. And it doesn't mean that one village member may need to, just have everybody in the team or the village do everything for them. But we attack that, or, it's not me against you, or it's the village principle where we all have a role to play and how things get done, how the village or how our family, how our household is being, conducted. We all need each other. And when one person in the village is hurting or is not able to do something, then everyone in the village pitches in, right? Because that person is still there. They
Right.
still need support, but they also need, as you said, to feel like I still can do some things. I'm not useless. I still have a purpose. So just validating them. Um,
Hmm.
can you speak a little bit more about that communication as a team or the village principle?
Yes, yes. I used to always say, you know, that it took a village to keep me functional, right?
Right.
So, I mean, part of that village is my chiropractor and my massage therapist and my acupuncturist and my coach and, you know, all those things too. But I think it can be really helpful because it when you're diagnosed with something like fibromyalgia, that's a chronic illness, it can very much feel like it's me against everything. Me
Yes.
against my illness, but also sort of me even against my community, especially, you know, if we go back to our beginning of our conversation about believing people, right?
Hmm.
So when the people around us can sort of place themselves, even just through their language, even if it's like partly through their actions, but with their language, that it's us against something, right? I maybe if you start, maybe it's us against fibromyalgia. I don't think fibromyalgia personally has to be the enemy, but whatever it is, like we're fighting this together. We're figuring this out together, and that also has to have, like, it has to be lived out in practical terms too. So, one of the things that I encourage my clients to do is, again, on those good days when you have your whole brain, to sit down with the people in your life and be like, hey, you know, I need some help, but honestly, I don't even know what you might want to help with, and just sort of brainstorm together. I had a client who sat down and did this with her fiance, and he was like, "Oh, well, when I'm always up before you, so I'll make the coffee. I'll make sure your bag and everything you need for the day is all ready to go, so that she could sleep as long as she could, and then get up, grab the stuff, and run out the door without even really having to think about what was happening." Right. And so
Yes.
that is not something she ever would have thought to ask him to do. It
Right.
was something he volunteered to do when they sat down and looked at the whole picture together. I think it's really helpful to specifically look at calendars together.
Hmm.
You know, even if it's just two of you, right? Me and my husband, we still will sort of coordinate our calendars. My mom and dad used to always call them dates. They would go on a date to talk about their calendars. But
Team
if you
meeting.
yes, yes. If you've got kids, if you've got more moving pieces, right? Then there's more to sit down and coordinate. And it can be things like, "Oh, okay, this day I've got a physical therapy appointment, so you're going to have to make dinner that day because I'm going to be worn out."
Yeah.
Right? And thinking through like the whole picture together as a team. I can take this, you can take that. I need help here. I can help you there,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And it can be it can smooth out a lot of things. It also helps with those expectations we talked
Yes.
about too. When you're
Yes.
looking at it and being like, "Oh, okay, this is going to be a heavy week for me. I'm probably going to be, in more pain, or what can we cut out because I am in a flare right now. So can we simplify this next week?"
Hmm.
Those kinds of things. Just again, it's the communication that makes such a difference.
Yes, communication is definitely the key. Even having a talk with yourselves as the person as the person who is going through managing fibromyalgia. Sometimes we have to have a little pep talk with ourselves. Either, well, it's time for you to rest. Or that, okay, maybe you can push yourself a little bit, but just as a reminder to ourselves to make sure that we, give ourselves the care that we need. So, this is a conversation that we can have for hours, as you know.
I know. I know.
And we have covered a lot today. But as we close, what is two thoughts? One, what would be the if they don't hear anything else? What is a key takeaway that you would want a person that has fibromyalgia to walk away with, and a person who is supporting someone with fibromyalgia?
I love that question. So, for the person who has fibromyalgia, we'll talk to you first. The if you walk away with nothing else, I want you to know that fibromyalgia is real. It's
Amen.
not in your head.
Amen.
I also want you to know that even if your doctor doesn't know, there are many, many things that can be done, and you can feel better than you do right now. 100%. My fibromyalgia is in remission. What that means is I have had no fibro pain since 2018.
Awesome.
So yes, yes. And,
Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you. I always joke that it was a lot of hard work and a lot of that work looked like rest.
I'm still a work in progress.
And it takes time. It takes time to get there.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And it takes the right help. So
Yes.
that's the other piece of that too, is because our doctors don't always know everything, and no one person can know everything anyway.
Right.
It often means having to go beyond our medical team to get the help that we need. So that's what I want you to know if you are listening and you have fibromyalgia. For the caregivers, the friends, the family members, if you don't have fibromyalgia but you love somebody who does, I'll start with the same thing. I want you to know that fibromyalgia is real, right? If you could just take one thing away from this, it would be to believe them. Believe what they're telling you. If they say that they hurt and they didn't yesterday, believe them. Like,
Yes.
it's pretty simple. There
Exactly.
are, I love the saying that, we don't fake being sick, but we fake being well.
For sure. That's what we've become quite proficient at.
Yes,
Faking
exactly.
it until we try to make it.
Yeah.
That is sage advice. It's just believe.
Yeah, if you do nothing else, just listen and believe like that what we're saying is actually what's going on with us. We may not even understand it. We may not even know what works, what doesn't work, how, why I feel worse today. Just believe that it is.
Yeah. That is so good. You know, loving someone through pain, through fibromyalgia, any type of chronic pain, it's not going to always be perfect. It's not about doing everything right. As you said, it's about being connected to that person. It's about staying curious and kind and compassionate, um, extending grace to
Yeah.
that person. Um, I just want to thank you so much again for joining me, Tammy. Let our listeners know how they can reach out to you. I certainly will be, using you as a resource within my practice as well, because I come, in contact with many people who are suffering from these type of things. So
Hmm.
let us know
Yeah.
how we can reach you.
Yeah. So, if you're listening to this, you're probably a podcast person. So, I have a podcast too, the Fibromyalgia Podcast. Super easy to find. That's the name. So you can look that up. You can also find it at fibromyalgiapodcast.com. We do a lot of things on there. There's episodes where it's really like me coaching you. There's also episodes where I interview doctors and researchers. We also talk about a lot of things that sort of intersect with fibromyalgia. So, whether that's an episode on endometriosis or trauma or, whatever else it might be, we talk about anything that intersects with fibromyalgia. So that is a great resource. There are even, I recently put out an episode about ways that we can help our loved ones help us. So that could be sort of a continuation of this conversation, and maybe even something that you can share with the people around you, whether you are someone with fibromyalgia, sharing it with somebody that you wish could understand it a little bit better, or somebody who doesn't have fibromyalgia, sharing it potentially as a resource for the person that you know who does have fibromyalgia. There's also a bunch of resources on that
Yes,
same
there are.
website. You can download copies of my book. You can find out what your fibromyalgia wellness style is. You can get Tammy's list of my favorite things for the year, kind of like Oprah's favorite things, but from a little bit of a fibro perspective. There's all kinds of stuff out there. And if you are interested in my training programs or working with me or any of my coaches, that information is all out there too.
Yes, it is a wealth of information, and I had a good time looking through it.
Awesome. Have you taken your wellness style quiz yet?
I started it and didn't finish, but I'm definitely going to finish
Ooh,
the quiz. I was very interested in that to see I kind of
yes.
know what my style is, which I need to improve on. Like I said, I'm a work in progress. But
Yes.
yeah, I thought that was very interesting because, to be quite honest, that was the first time I've ever seen a fibromyalgia style quiz. So I will be reaching out to you about how I score on that.
Yes,
So
please do. Please do.
yes,
Because our personalities really do intersect with how we take care of ourselves, how our symptoms manifest. We might both be lying in bed, not sleeping, but a perfectionist is going to be going through that checklist of things that didn't get done. And me as a playmaker, I'm actually not even in bed yet because I'm probably still reading my book or watching my TV show or playing my game. I'm playing. That's why I'm not in
right.
bed.
Exactly. So if you are, a person with fibromyalgia, definitely take that quiz because that can offer a lot more insight to what's been going on. Even if you've had it for a while and you think you know all there is to know about it, there's always something that we can learn and grow on.
That's right.
So, to all of my Self Care Sanctuary podcast listeners and supporters, thank you so much for joining us today. And as I always say, you know, self care is not an option, it's necessary, and then we have to learn how to love ourselves. And once we learn to love ourselves, it really doesn't matter who doesn't, right?
That's right.
So, to all of my listeners, thank you so much again for joining us. Take care of your mind, your body, and your heart gently. Goodbye for now.